I now have the pleasure of introducing a man that I think needs no introduction in our industry. I had the pleasure of meeting Paul yesterday, and Paul's got a long bio because he's done so much. And I guess the way that I wanted to introduce Paul and to bring him up onto stage is to say there's a lot of people in this industry that hold him in the highest regards, and I think that that's a very good sign for everybody and what he can bring to the table. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Paul and let him take over for the next 45 minutes. Thanks, everybody.
Oh, wait, is that it?
That's it, mate. That's it.
We're here.
There we are.
Scott. Thank you, Scott.
All yours.
Thank you, Scott. Good morning. Good morning. You are there. Thank you so much for being here. By the way, before we get on the way, and what a great thing this is right in this venue. Someone said to me that your environment dictates your performance, and by the way, that's important for you to remember in this session, okay? But it's just amazing to feel the buzz in this place. And I never thought, I'm 29,534 days old today. Don't go working that out, by the way, it's really scary, but that is true. And so in all of those years, I never thought I'd see this environment in the accounting profession ever since I started working with the profession way back in 1981. So incredible to be here with you. So what I wanted to say was this would not be possible. I'm not sure whether they're in the room because I can't see a thing with these lights, but that's okay. But this would not have happened were it not for these guys here. So what I want you to do, I know we're a small room, but let's do it really, really loud as if they could hear it. Could we just acknowledge the role that David and Tim have played in making this possible? Go for it. Hey. Hey, well done. And as I said before, I really am thrilled to be with you. Again, at my age, I'm thrilled to be anywhere. But what's more important than all of that is how do you feel about being here? So what I want you to do, that was an example. I want you just to turn to the person next to you. Just go ahead, look at them. Just really find someone next to you. Maybe there, somewhere there. Just find someone next to you. If you're sitting on your own, turn around and find someone. This is a very important exercise. And look them in the eye as if you're really caring for them. That's very good. And watch up here. I've got an example of how this works. So what you're going to do is when you look at them in the eye, when I say go, but only when I say go, you're going to give them a high five. Now, you can do that sitting down or you can do it standing up, depending on how you feel. Not yet, only when I say go. And you are going to say, after that, I'm thrilled to be here with you. Does that make sense? You got that one? So, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Go for it. Go for it. Thrilled to be here with you. Okay. Very, very good. Now, let me explain why I am thrilled to be here with you. It's because I am talking with a room that is absolutely full of heroes. And the point, that's a really serious point, by the way, so let me get my serious face on. That is really, really important. But what's also important to acknowledge is that most of us in the profession don't really know that we're heroes. And you see that every single day from the pricing, from the way in which we interact with people and so on. So we really are, as I said, we're working in a room full of heroes. But what happens, and if you were in the last session, you would have seen it being played out, that most of us are here. We're in this sea of sameness and not knowing what to do about it. Well, this guy here can offer us, oh, by the way, before I get to this guy, so how do you see the sea of sameness? Well, someone comes up to you and you say, or they say to you, what do you do? What's the typical response? Just yell it out. If I said to you, what do you do? What would you say? I'm an accountant. Have you ever noticed when you say that, the person who asks you the question says, oh, I've just got to go to the toilet or something? You ever noticed that? And this is so seriously important. But have a look. What would happen? So that's what you typically say. But what would happen if you said that? Oh, thanks for asking. I'm an accountant, and I positively change my client's life. What would happen in that 15 seconds? What do you think? Hello? Playing it to you, what would happen? It would totally change that environment. Does that make sense to you? I hope it does. And so with that in mind, this guy can actually help. Some of you may know who this guy is. By the way, when I say who this guy is, the answer to that question is not Paul, that's you in 3 years' time. That's not the answer. Anybody know who that is? Kind of a famous author. Anybody know? No? Who said Mark Twain? Did someone say? Oh, good, Mark Twain. It is, in fact, Mark Twain. And way back when, he said this: the two most important days in your life are the day you're born and the day you find out why. I'm really, really hopeful that as a result of our time together today, you're going to find out why. Because when you find out why, and then when you articulate that, it changes seriously everything about the relationship, A, you have with yourself, the relationship you have with your team, and importantly, the relationship you have with your clients. So what happens is instead of floating in the, by the way, show of hands, how many of us can relate to this, that people are floating in a sea of sameness? Show me. Exactly. And what's really interesting is how we can unlock it. And by the way, when you unlock it, it's not about the company that you're unlocking, it's actually about you. And here's what happens. If you wanted to sort of see it graphically, this is you, and here's your firm trying to do certain things. So for example, you're trying to attract, hopefully, new clients and keep them. You're trying to engage them, and then you're trying to delight them. So how do we do that? Well, what we do is we use particular tools, particular pieces of software to email them or whatever else it is. But the problem is that very little of it gets through. But what we can do, you can see there, very little, hopefully you can see there, very little gets through. But what if we were to make a bigger you? What if we were? And that's, by the way, what's going to happen today. Then all of a sudden, certain things happen. And you'll notice when these arrows now change, you'll notice that the direction also changes, that it now becomes a two-way direction. In other words, what you do is you end up with a firm where people feel that they belong. And that is seriously, seriously crucial. So here are 3 things that you can do to make yourself a hero. Do take a note of them, by the way. And by the way, you probably don't think about it. I'm going to give you a choice. So in the middle, you transform lives. Now, you may not say, and just think for a minute right now of the clients whose lives you've transformed. Just think. I'm not thinking about the ones you keep out of prison or whatever, but that would be a transformation. So you've got a choice. So by the way, you might not like the word transform. Oh, by the way, I'm not just talking about your clients either. You may not be able to see that down the bottom, but when I talk about lives, I mean yours. I mean the lives of your team. We're going to talk a little bit later about the team and the lives of your clients. You may prefer to say, I change lives, whatever it is. So what I want you to do is just make a choice right now. Are you an A, feeling good about saying, I enrich lives? Feeling a B, feeling good about transform or change? Or are you a C? Now, let me just see. Can I see? It's hard. I'll do this. I can see now. Show me the A's. Where are the A's? Where are the A's? Can I see you? That's the enrich, sort of. How many would go for the, not too many go for the enrich. How many go for the transform or change? Thank you, Peter. So a few. And how many go to enhance? Oh, big thing today for enhance. That's really, really cool. Very, very good. Okay. Now, what you just did, this is a move, a very interesting move that makes. And I know you've heard about this in the last session. We talked about the whole thing around advisory and stuff. That's not what I'm talking about. It really isn't. I'm talking about it in a much simpler way. But it is a move from reporting on history to doing this, helping your selected clients win, whatever that means to them, whatever that means to them. And it's very interesting what happens when you have that initial conversation that I was mentioning. By the way, that usually is probably a straighter line for you because when you look at the numbers, you're the expert with those things. You really are. Oh, by the way, I'm going to show you something about experts in just a second. There has never, ever, ever been a time, well, possibly the beginning of COVID, when all of you were just absolute heroes, but when we needed you, or when we need you to stand, to take a stand, and to do this, right? And this word time, I want to play with that in hopefully a valuable way for you. So there are 3 things. Peter, this is the slide that I was talking to you about. So there's time, there's tools, and there's models. But the thing that I want you to notice is this. It's not about the time. It's not about the time. And it's not about the tools, although a little bit of it is. So as far as time is concerned, it's not about time. It's not about tools, although, again, that's sort of changing a little bit. But what it is about, there we go, what it is about is the models on which you base your business, or more particularly, if I'm going to make it really personal, it's your model. And let me just make an observation. And sometimes when people hear me, they go, oh, Paul's the guy who says you should scrap the timesheets and all that kind of stuff, and there's lots of reaction to that. But just ignore that. Let me just make this point. If you are running a business, any business, that in some way is dependent, or you make it dependent on time, if you think about what's happening, then the business has to be almost screwed. Because our perception, or the reality, what is happening now in terms of time, is quite different than it was 3 or 4, in fact, quite different than it was 2 years ago. So if the business is doing something that depends on time and you make it depend on time, there are some serious problems ahead. Show me your hands if you get that. You do. Very, very good. Really do. So let's build on that and let's take a look at how you see the world. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a series of words. Here's the words, or the words, 2 words, opportunity, and then that thing on the bottom. I want you to turn to the person next to you. I'm going to give you 10 seconds to look at those words and tell the person next to you or behind you what you see. Go for it. 10 seconds. What do you see on the screen? What's there? You got 5 seconds to go. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay. So there's actually 4 possibilities. Let's look at the first one. This, by the way, is the default that people see, and that is this one. Opportunity is nowhere. Can I just see the hands? How many of us saw that? The first thing that you saw? A couple of us, or a lot more than a couple, actually. The other one that is the second default is this one. Opportunity is now here. How many saw? Oh, you're in the right place, you see. Environment. Now, there's about 2% of people who go, that didn't make any sense to me. Oh, really? Why? Because what I saw was opportunity, I snow here. Now, Peter, that could be useful for you going to Japan, right? But the real key is opportunity is now here. And it's here in ways that are perhaps bigger than you imagine. And it's a move from reporting on history. Now, again, this is not saying you should do advisory. I hate that word too because it doesn't really mean anything. But this does. Helping your clients win in whatever way they determine that is. Right? Now, I showed you before that that's probably because of all the stuff you're doing with Change GPS. That's more of a straight line. Now, you see that little note on the screen here. I wanted to have a conversation with you. Now, I was going to run a whole series of things which go from that, but what I want you to do, if you'd like to explore that a little further, just click on that thing. It will automatically send me an email which says, please send me more information on how I can do that. It's very simple. Just going to send you effectively one link, and it's not a link to me, by the way, although the email will be to me. So go for that. There's a few more of those things coming up. So let's talk about 3 things that you can use to make this a reality for you. The first one, clarity. If you don't know what you're doing in the next 15 minutes, then there really is no clarity. Courage, the boldness that's required to connect and stand out. And stand out, by the way, involves taking a stand. And that stand is really interesting when you take it, the courage to say no. When you send me that note, I'll send you a little graph that shows what I call the 225-100 rule. It's very, very important to get a hold of that one. This one, commitment to the new story. And it really is about the stories we tell. You heard that from Kerry this morning. Take a look at this one, the power of clarity. Mr. Jobs in 1992 said this, for the past 33 years, I've looked in the mirror every morning and I've asked myself, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I'm about to do today? Now, look at the next bit. And whenever I answer, whenever the answer has been no for too many days in a row, I know I need to change something. Hopefully you've taken a note of that, and hopefully you can answer it. By the way, I'm going to come back to him in just a moment. This guy, though, is interesting, Sir Richard. Sir Richard said this. He said, business is all about creating connections, because only through these connections, which means sitting in your office on your own is not the way to do things, can we imagine and achieve something extraordinary. I want you to notice that last word. It doesn't say something ordinary. It says something extraordinary. And look at the number of times that the word connection occurs here. Also the word imagine. In 2007, someone came to me and said, Paul, I want you to imagine something. And I said, what do you want me to imagine? They said, I want you to imagine that every time something good happened in your business, something great happened in our world. That thought took my breath away and now determines what I do every day. But again, and I'll show you a little bit about that later on. This guy, how many know of this guy? Seth. Yeah, Seth. He started writing a blog 14 years ago, and I've stored every single one of those blogs, which is crazy because I could get them on his website, right? But I stored every single one. His new book is great, by the way, all about strategy. And he said this. He's arguably the best marketer on the planet. He said, marketing is no longer about the stuff you make, but about the stories that you tell. Please take a note of that. It's not about the inputs. It's about the stories that you tell. Or if you wanted to put that slightly differently, you would say, marketing is no longer about the stuff you sell, but about the stories you tell. So the interesting question is, what stories are you telling? What stories are you telling yourself? Are you saying, I'm just an accountant? Or are you saying, I help my clients win, my selected clients win? And these stories, by the way, are all about inspiring and connecting on a human level. Let me go back to Mr. Jobs again. Because you're going to be, this I think is one of the arguably most important things. 3 years ago, I got an email with this line that you're about to see as the subject line. I opened the email and seriously from then on in, I've seen things very differently. Jobs said the storyteller is the most powerful person in the world. That was the headline. And then he said, the storyteller sets the vision, the values, and the agenda for an entire generation yet to come. And those last 7 words are the most important on that slide, I'd say. The moment you get that, remember we talked about the bigger you, right? The moment you get this, the whole world changes because you realize it's not about you. It's seriously not about you. It's about something bigger than you, the values and so on that you're espousing. So it's about something bigger. And the moment you get that, in a flash, in a literal flash, your business can change. And you're about to see that happen as well. So if we were to put it this way, stories, they help you move. The way I love alliteration, Peter, as you know, so there's the alliteration for you, to have you move from standard to stand out, in other words, out of the sea of sameness. Why? Because you stand for something that is bigger than you. Show me your hands if that makes sense, if that sort of looks like an interesting journey. It really is an interesting journey. Let's show you why. So everything changes. Everything changes. And by the way, it doesn't just change for you. It changes for your team. You're about to see some stats on teams. How many of us have teams, by the way, even teams of one? Great. Have a look at these numbers. They will blow your mind. So these new stories then help you achieve extraordinary things with your team and with your processes and with your clients. Let's have a look at this. This is, I asked ChatGPT to draw me a boat with 100 people in it so that we could talk percentages. And you'll see I asked ChatGPT to show me that boat with people rowing in different ways. Why? Because the latest Gallup report, they do this every quarter, shows some amazing stats. Let me show you the stats. This, if you imagine that boat, then what we've got is the people heading this way. By the way, that's the way the boat should be heading, right? You find that rowing hard the right way, look at that number, only 23%. How about this number? Dangling in the water, 65%. We talked before about changing lives. I want you to imagine what's going on for their lives. Right? So they're kind of there, but they're emotionally not there. Does that make sense? That's what that means. And, by the way, this number is worse for Australia. This is the global one. That number for Australia down the bottom there is 20%. Okay? So, and rowing the wrong way, 12%. By the way, the rowing the wrong way, they're the quote-unquote bitches, moaners, complainers. Have a guess who their audience is. Who's the audience that they talk to? Yeah, They talk to these people. We used to think that the way to create a great organization was to have, you know, the high flyer so that people would rise to the level of the high flyer. Google knocked that on the head 10 years ago. It's actually people regress to the lowest level in the business. It's very, very, very important. So the question is, oh, by the way, I looked up, what is this costing the Australian economy? Have a look at the number. 221 billion. 221 billion. And you and I, the important thing is we can influence that. We may not be able to sort of halve it, but we can certainly influence that by doing things a little bit differently. Let me just check my watch, and I'll show whether, yeah, I probably can show this. No, I won't. There's a slide, or rather there's a video that I've got, which is a stunning, stunning video where you'll get to hear a team member talk about the difference this makes. Her name is Rose, but what I want you to do, rather than spend 3 minutes watching the video now, what I want you to do is get your phones out, because I'm going to give you a QR code which will send the video directly to you, or at least it will send the email to me to get the video to you. Here's Rose. There she is. And
so my name's Rose.
The audio isn't on, so that's right, cool. But there's the QR code that will send me a video, an email which says video, and I'll pop that video in your box. It's about a 3-minute video. Watch it. It is absolutely stunning. We all need roses, as it were. So, and it's pretty straightforward. It really is pretty straightforward. This whole thing I'm going to show you is sort of 9 numbers in a minute that are absolutely mind-blowing. So, the foundation I would suggest to you to building an amazing firm is to find that higher purpose. Remember Mark Twain. To find the higher purpose for your business. Why are you turning up every day? Why are you doing that? And it's knowing why you do what you do. That's number one. Second part is communicating that effectively, both to your team members, of course, and to your clients. And this whole thing here about business becoming highly attractive to the top talent means that you can build a business that works rather than working in a business that doesn't. Hopefully that makes sense. Peter knows that makes really sense. And what it does is gives these people a reason to stay. It's really, really important. This is how you scale right there. And then what happens is these great people, plus that bigger purpose, that thing that is bigger than you, attracts even more customers. I prefer to call your clients customers, sending the business into this upward spiral and of growth and positive impact. So let's see. Here's a brilliant way of making this happen. There are 2 key mind shifts that I want you to get in this quick 45 minutes that we're together today. There's 2 really important mindsets here. The first mindset is this one. To move from profit-driven, I know that sounds scary, to move from profit-driven to purpose-driven. And in the last 10 years, Pete, you know that if I looked at all the articles that talk about purpose, I'd be, oh my God, it's like the word of the century. And fortunately, the Australian government, are you aware of this? What happens in corporate is people get together, they go on what's called a retreat. I wish they would call it a forward, but they call it retreats. And what happens is they start talking and then they come up with a phrase that's the mission. Are you aware that the Australian government now fines people? They look at that vision, that purpose, and if the organization they determine is not doing that, they fine them. And there's significant fines that are going on. In Europe, it's the same thing. So that's where we've been for the last 10 years. But what I want to do is get you beyond that to move from purpose-driven to what I call impact-driven. And it's so much easier to do. But let's just talk about this purpose-driven. This guy is the former CEO of Unilever. He happens to be an advisor to us in B1G1. His name is Paul Polman. He's the guy that they got together and said, after the millennial goals, what should we aim for? And then he came up with the SDGs. He says this, profit is not the purpose of a business. Now that's really scary. It is the result of serving that higher purpose. And when you have that, you not only have a business that you're proud of, but you have what he calls an amazing business. Let me show you another way of saying that. This lady, her name is Corey Barry. She's the CEO of Best Buy. For Best Buy, the guys in America know what that means, but Best Buy, think Harvey Norman. Is that okay? It's like, you know, fridges and electronics and all that kind of stuff. Best Buy was a basket case. They're in every city in the US, an absolute basket case. She came along and together with her, there's so many books written on this now, together with her chairman, changed the business. How did she do it? Watch. She says this: the purpose of this company is not to make money. It's imperative to make money, but it's not the purpose. Show me your hands if you get that. It's a really interesting thing to try and get. So if that's the case, right, the purpose is not to make money, then what the heck is her purpose? And importantly, what's the purpose of the people that you might meet when you go into the equivalent of a Harvey Norman store? It's very simple, and we've kind of touched on it. She says this: our purpose is to enrich lives through technology. Now, clearly, technology plays a part in what you do, but why not just take a leaf out of that book and simply try for the next couple of days to really remove the technology, put a full stop on the end. That your purpose is to enrich lives, bearing in mind the definition of lives: yours, your family, and the clients. Now, let me show you how that might work. Here's a shot. It looks like an English street, and it is. And here's a shot of an accounting firm that does what you just saw. And when you open that door, you are surrounded, well, surrounded is the wrong word, you see some fairly large posters which the team members go past every day. And when you're a client walking in there, or when you're talking with them on Zoom, this is the background that you see. They say it very, very simply: we enrich lives, we help our clients win. And so when that client comes in, you know, already you've got that thing about we're going to have a very different conversation. So please steal that if you want. Talking of steal, let's go here. This is Singapore. I don't know why I said talking of steal and take you to this place, but anyway. Anybody know where this is? Just yell it out if you know the background of that city. That's a city until last week where I spent the last 17 years of my life, at least, aside from airplanes. That's actually Singapore. Okay? And this is one of 3 Apple stores in Singapore. One of 3. This is right opposite MBS, or the Marina Bay Sands, and you have to go underneath the water to actually come up in the middle of an Apple store. Now, I'm very fortunate in the sense that I have a future son-in-law whose name is John. The only unfortunate thing about John is he spells John without an H, which really worries me. But anyway, he had an internship at Apple, and the result of that has just been amazing. He would come home, or at least when he came around to our place, and I would say, "John, how is it?" "Oh, I don't want to work for anyone else ever." Okay, that sort of stuff. So I got to talk with John, and he said to me one day, he said, I said, "How are you going?" He said, "I'm going very well." Right? So how do you translate that? What does that mean? He says, "Well, I'm hitting the average sales target." So I said to him, "What is the average sales target?" Meaning, at the end of the day, what number of dollars goes on the register that you contributed to John? So this is not, you know, the average sale in the sense of the sale of a product. This is every day what's going on. Talk to the person next to you. What do you think that is? What do you think it would be in dollars? What do you think? Oh, in fact, just yell it out. What do you think? What do you think? Go ahead. What would it be? Average person, you know, those kind of quirky people that are in the Apple store, you know, they've got rings in every orifice, you know, that sort of thing. Right? What do you think it would be? Seriously, what do you think it would be? Just yell it out. Is it 5,000, 10,000? What is it? 10,000? 10,000? Which one? 50,000. Your first name is? Correct. Meaning, Linda, both answers are correct. Actually, Linda, the first answer, 50,000, is close. But it's not actually the number. The number, and this is the number all worldwide on Apple. Okay? The number is 75,000 US. per day, per person walking the floor. Show me your hands if you're blown away by that number. So I say to John, "Oh, John, I bet that's because you did the sales training, right?" He said, "Well, no." He said, "We had 3 months of training, but only about 2 hours of that was selling." I said, "Oh, really? What? The other?" I said, "Oh, that was all about our values and what we stand for. And I'm about to show you what that training looks like." So I said, "But oh, John, I bet you I know the first question they told you should ask when someone comes into the store." He says, "Give it a try, Paul." So I said, "I'm sure you asked this. Good morning. What brings you into the store this morning?" He says, this was so bad. He said, "Paul, that's the very question they tell us not to ask." So I said, "Really?" So I said, "Well, we'll come back to that, but in the meantime, what's the closing question that you ask?" He said, "Well, that's the really simple one." So I said, "Oh, really? What's that?" He said, "What color would you like?" Which is like interesting, right? So I said, "Well, what's the opening question?" He said, "We don't ask an opening question." I said, "Really? What do you do?" He says, "We just welcome people into the store. We say, 'Good morning, thank you for dropping in.'" And I said, "Really? That's it?" And I said, "Why is that it?" Now listen to what he said. He said, "Paul, because Apple tell us," listen to this, "it's all about building a relationship." And then he said something that really shook me to my core. What actually sent me on a period of research. He said, "What happens in an Apple store, you need to be aware of this," he said, "is people come in here ready to buy." Right? It makes sense, right? So then I started to think about, how do you create an organization, an accounting firm, where people connect with you, and when they connect, they're ready to buy? How do you do that? Well, in the Apple store, what happened is when Mr. Jobs opened the Apple store, everybody else was closing their stores, like Dell and people like that, they're closing them. So they said, "Steve, it's really crazy to open a store." So he went to a place where I went for a couple of days, well, actually for 4 days. It's called the Ritz-Carlton University. And the Ritz-Carlton, of course, is the hotel. And one of the things they talk about is this important thing about values. And they have a thing called a credo. And this credo, if you're a team member in the Ritz-Carlton, you have to have this credo on your person somewhere every day. And if when you turn up, they check, "You got it on?" In the Apple store, they don't do it on paper. They do it in the wallet on the iPhone. Does that make sense? Now, right, I'm about to show you something that I probably shouldn't, but it's really important, okay? Just don't say I got this from Paul, okay? So what I want to do is, and you know, normally I would get you to read it, but that sounds a little bit weird. So just mouth it with me, right? We're here to enrich lives, to help dreamers become doers, to help passion expand human potential, to do the best work of our lives. At our best, we give more than we take, from the planet to the person beside us. We become a place to belong, where everyone is welcome. Everyone. In fact, John said to me, he said, "Paul, you realize you would get a job at Apple, do you? You realize you would?" And I said, "Oh, really? How do you know that?" He said, "Because I'm a fanboy." He said, No. In our cohort, we took someone on who was 80 years old. You would get a job. Right? So anyway, so everyone's welcome, including me. He says, we draw strength from our differences. Just mouth it with me. From background and perspective to collaboration and debates. We are open. We redefine expectations, first for ourselves, then for the world, because we think different. Now, I know that should say differently. Yeah? Because we think different, because good enough isn't, because what we do says who we are. Pretty damn powerful. When you get people coming into your place, bearing in mind what we talked about with the team members, show me your hands if you'd like a copy of that. Show me your hands if you would. Okay, well, simple way to get the copy is just, oh, by the way, I haven't finished it yet. Sorry. We redefine expectation. That bit we've done. Look at this. We find courage, trying to fail, to learn and to grow, to figure out what's next, to imagine the unimaginable, and to do it all again tomorrow. At our core, we believe our soul is our people. People who recognize, I love that line, people who recognize themselves in each other, people who enable others to shine, people who work to leave this world better than they found it, people who live to enrich lives. So, if you would like a copy of that, You might give me a number on your fingers that tells me how long I've got left, Scott. if
You've
you're-
still got plenty of time.
Oh, good. Okay, good. Okay, you're not going to drag me off yet. Okay, so just scan that. That will send me an email that has a topic on it called Credo, and I'll be very pleased to send you the Credo on that. So, bear in mind where we're going then. There it is, by the way, if you missed it on the previous slide. So this is where we're moving, from standard to stand out, because we stand for something bigger than ourselves. But let's just go a stage further, because remember I said the second thing we need to do is to move from purpose to impact driven. I'm going to show you a couple of examples on this. Oh, really? My watch just said, hang on a second. Whoop, daisy. Oh, I must have set the wrong watch time there. There we go. So, to become impact driven, here we go. And impact driven is such a cool place. And when we connect, by the way, that's where we'll go. Because impact is measurable. Words are not, but actions are. It becomes very trackable. It becomes inspirational, because you're able to say, just by being in this meeting, just by being on Zoom, for example, 5 kids just got access to game-changing education. By the way, you're going to be able in a minute to make that happen. And it's connecting. And so this whole idea of impact lets you become a business for good, a business that seriously stands out because you stand for something bigger than yourself. I promised you 9 numbers. Have a look at these 9 numbers. They're amazing numbers. They're from the latest research on doing what we just said. Have a look at them. We'll go through them really quickly. A 57% reduction in team turnover. A 63% increase in engagement on the team. What's this next one? A 225% increase in productivity just from doing what we've talked about today. And again, it's not about tools, right? Although some of the tools are really great. 30% increase in innovation. By the way, do you realize that if you're measuring time, one of the things you discount is the time for innovation? Because you go, oh, well, I can't charge. That's why the business is sort of screwed. 90% above average profit. 79% say this has been a magnet for us to get great talent. 40% annual growth. And have a look at this one. When you come to sell the business, 175% on EBITDA right there. And this one, people find they're 400% more likely to buy. So, purpose powers us in interesting ways. But impact, the whole impact thing that we're about, also powers you more. So if you'd like a copy of the research that goes for that, you might just write me a little note. I'll show you how to do it later on. Because, in fact, I'm not sure where the QR code is. Oh, we can do it here. We can do it here. We said it's all about connection. So let's you and I connect in a purposeful way. Make sure you've got your phones. Make sure you've got your phones. Okay. And which means you're going to do a QR code. This one requires a bit of work, so go ahead, scan that. And what you would see is something that accountants around the world are now getting their clients to do, particularly when they send people proposals. By the way, don't ever send people proposals. Don't even talk about the word proposals. Say, instead of saying, here's our proposal, or here's our quote, talk about, here's our plan. Just change that word. It changes everything for it. So you should see on your phones now, you'll see it vertically, but you'll see something like that. Is that right? You've got that on your phone? So all of this stuff here, by the way, right there, you can define. You can have as many of these things as you like. So you can change the words. You can do whatever you like in these things. I've got 72 of these working for me, and many accountants have many more than that. So as a result, since we talked about what you stand for, I just selected 3 projects that you might want to let me do for you. So what would you like us to do? All you've got to do is choose. I'll make it happen. So provide 43 days of access to clean water. 730 million people don't have that. Or do you want to protect these guys from the stuff that the palm oil people do? Or would you like to give 5 days of education to kids in the world who really need it? Go ahead and choose. No downsides on choosing. And you should see something that says proceed. Do you see that? Just go ahead, and then it will say that's happening. And then underneath that, you'll see my name on it. But of course, when your clients would see this, it would be your branding that's on this. Does that make sense? So it's a really, really interesting way of connecting. So this connection is really important. So how do we make it happen? I'm not going to spend that much time on making it happen because we don't have that much time. But let's do this. Let's go to Forbes and Harvard to find out how we do it. And then I'm going to give you about 7 things that are really important to do. This is a lady, you may have read her work. She's called Aviva down here. She's also not only a Forbes contributor, she's the leader of the leadership team in Harvard. And she recently said this. I should have this etched on my chest. She says, great companies leverage their skills and know-how for the greater good. Notice that. It's not about you. Great companies leverage their skills and know-how for the greater good. They broaden the definition of what the core products and services do, and they create a much bigger purpose, one that's tangible and visible to the customers they seek to serve. Let me give you the translation of that. The translation of that is every business, yours and mine, needs a brand new story. And we need it now. There's never been a time when we need that story. Now, had we had more time, I would go into what that means, but the question is how. One of the answers to that is what I now do. I've been doing it since 2007, which is this whole thing called B1G1 and so on. But I'm not going to go into that now. What I'm going to do is this, remind you of what, by the way, have you enjoyed our time together so far? Oh, really? It gets better. Stay tuned. So I want to remind you of what Mark Twain said, but I also want to add in a couple of other things. This is something that my friend Simon Sinek said. He said, differentiation comes, getting out of that sea of sameness comes from clarity of why you're doing it, not from adding some new tool. That makes sense? And not excess of what, in other words. And this one that I really, really love, follow your path, follow your why, and leave a trail. Why would you want to do that? Because it's not about you, okay? And when you think about leaving a trail, how do you do that? You do that through stories and creating impacts. But you see, the story is not about what you say. So the story we tell ourselves is really, really important. The story we tell others is also really important. But the stories that others tell about you is, of course, based on what you do, if that makes sense. So let me give you some stuff that might help you do what you can do. These are sort of radical ideas. I'm not sure that people talk about them often enough in accounting circles. But we'll just go through this very, very quickly. And I just want you to think about a whole lot of what ifs, right? And there are about 8 of them, I think. What if? What if you and I, as a result of being here this morning, what if we could make just tiny shifts that change not just our lives, but the lives of the people that we're privileged to serve, and the lives of the people that are in our families, and the lives of the people that are in our team. What if? So the story that I would want you to tell is not about you aspiring to be great, although that's really important. It's actually about inspiring others to be great. When that happens, a lot of things change. It's not about great products or great services. It really isn't. It's about people feeling great about your products and service. And of course, the why plays a very important part of that as well. It's not, this is good news, it's not about you doing more stuff. It's not, right? It's about doing stuff that matters, that really, really matters. It's not about you getting more. It's actually about you giving more. Very important to get that one. Oh, this one we've talked about. It's not about profits first. It's about purpose and impact first. And what about this one? I got it. It's not about being different. It's about making a difference every single day. Gotcha, Scott. Thank you. You're right on time, by the way. And it's not about creating a first impression. It's not about that. It's about creating a lasting legacy. Now, I told you how many days old I was, right? And I'm not sure whether this is an age thing, but I can tell you that as you age, you do start thinking about your legacy. You start thinking about it a lot. And remember I talked about alliteration. And so most people think about leaving a legacy, but we think about that too late. What if we could alliterate? In other words, what if we could find some L words that go with this? So instead of thinking about leaving a legacy, although that's important, we actually think about living it. We think about living it every single day. That becomes part of that purpose that we spoke about. What about, instead of just living it, we leverage it? What about if on our sites, and when we connect, I'll show you some incredible sites that accountants are now running, which talk about these things. And why are we doing all of that? Think back to Mr. Jobs again. For an entire generation yet to come. You know, the day will come when someone says to us, what do you do? And this is why there's this manifesto that David and the guys are working on, where we say, I'm an accountant, and people don't say, oh, I need to go to the toilet. But they say something else. And it's for an entire generation yet to come, or to put it more personally, it's for your children and your children's children. That's why this is critically important. Go back to that whole thing about setting the values and so on. Or, to put that slightly differently, well, what a journey that would be. Yes, it would, because it changes lives, not just yours, but the lives of the people you're privileged to serve. So just imagine that, but imagine it a slightly different way, if we can. Hopefully it's on that slide. I hope it is. Cross your fingers for me. Yeah, just imagine that. That each and every day, as a result of what we're doing, we are seriously changing lives. I hope that's been valuable for you. It's been great to share it with you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Scotty.
That's an amazing message to finish on. There's a bit of debate in the Change GPS office all the time. If you indulge me for just a second. David, his sort of go-to line is, good accountants in community makes better communities. I come up from a different space. My wife asked me a little while ago, like, why do I do what I do? Like, why GPS? And I remember, like, I told her a story about a firm that I was talking to around our Section 100A distribution advice report and how to educate their clients. And I said, I was showing this gentleman, maybe sort of around the 50 mark, been in practice for years, and it was a problem for him, and I showed him the report. And he got emotional, over Teams, he got emotional. And I asked, like, I sort of delved in, on Teams, and I delved into it a little bit, and he said, I spent 4 hours yesterday trying to write a report for my client to explain to them why it was changing, and I couldn't find it, and I didn't sleep last night. So, like, for me personally, like, I can help firms change the way that they live and what they work to help you guys do the same thing in communities and make communities better. And I think that when we look at the overview of the industry and where we've got to that point, I think you're the sort of godfather in that space and have sort of set the plan for all of us to be able to work off. So on that note, I think we need to give Paul another round of applause. Thank you very much. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, everybody. Catch you at the tea breaks, right?
And now there is lunches. So Louis is down through the public bar and back down a little bit. So we've got Louis down this side. I had dinner there last night. It was amazing. And then Maya Tiger is up on level 1. The real level 1, not like the half a level below or half a level above and the rabbit warren that we have to go to. For Cantonese, I believe. So we've got 2 lunch breaks, split your time. I don't know, maybe go for 2 lunches, your call. And then we'll get into the afternoon sessions. Thanks, everybody.